Tonight we're talking about how to maximize the chance your home will survive a wildfire. All the ideas here are based on the research done by fire scientist Jack Cohen. He's the founder of Firewise Communities USA recognition programs. His 40 years of research into fire science shows us that small changes we make on one property can make it safer in case of a wildfire. The key is not where homes are located. It's about changing the local conditions inside each home's ignition zone. You can't stop the wildfires altogether. Most homes in wildfires are destroyed because of ember casting, where burning material flies through the air ahead of the fire. We can do something about resisting those firebrands. We're going to show you how to solve the structure ignition problem in the home ignition zone around your house. Looking at the house, the first 5 feet out, the next 30-foot zone, and up to 100 feet from your home. When we have a wildfire in Woodmore, Monument, or Palmer Lake, your first job is to evacuate as soon as you see it's happening. We want you to avoid the chaotic traffic gridlock from thousands of people all trying to use our tangle of roads at the same time. And your house needs to be fire adapted to reduce the chances of flying embers turning into direct flame contact with your house. So it'll have a better chance of survival while you're somewhere else too in a safe spot. You can take steps now to help your home protect itself while you're gone. There's work you can do tomorrow and just this week that will help your property be more fire adapted. In this before and after picture, you can see our emergency preparedness group team in the orange shirts working hard. There are no guarantees. But do look at your property, get an evaluation done, find out what is recommended for you, and do it, so that when the fire does come through, you'll know that you did all that you could have. I'm Lisa Hatfield. I've been a Woodmore Firewise lot evaluator since 2013 and done lot evaluations for residents of Woodmore, the Tri-Lakes area, and all over El Paso County, Colorado. Trainings I've had on saving residences from wildland fire include the Wildland Fire Assessment Program, Fire Adapted Colorado, 3 of our local fire protection districts, and the Assessing Structure Ignition Potential from Wildfire class taught by the National Fire Protection Association. I've been part of the Tri-Lakes United Methodist Church Emergency Preparedness Group since we formed in 2012 after the Waldo Canyon fire. I helped with burned tree cleanup in Black Forest for 5 years after its fire, and our goal is to continue to assist communities with green mitigation in our area now and in the future. Let me know if you want assistance getting your neighbors started on this path. In 2020, we earned the National Wildfire Mitigation Award presented to us by the National Fire Protection Association. But let's get back to Jack Cohen, Ph.D. The key point is that if your home does not ignite, it won't burn down. Your home ignition zone is 100% under your control on your private property. It is all your responsibility. Just look at what type of roof do you have and how are the fuels arranged in your yard. Homes resistant to embers have a better chance of survival. That's it. Why did this home survive? The burning embers flying around in a blizzard did not ignite it. It wasn't the firefighters that saved it. The embers landed on the home ignition zone as they did on all the other houses, but the embers could not find a foothold on this house. They couldn't find any fuel to keep them alive. The house did not burn down because it did not ignite. Burning brands from a nearby wildfire landed in the home ignition zone here. They did find fuel to eat, and they burst into flame. Notice the green trees here that are not burned. It was not a wall of flames that took out this neighborhood. It was embers that blew through the air, landed in the home ignition zones of all these yards. Some smoldered and went out. Those homes did not catch on fire. You can control what is in your home's ignition zone. We have to ask the right questions. It's not how do we prevent wildfires. The National Fire Exclusion Policy has actually made wildfires worse, but that's not the topic for today. Our limited firefighting resources need to focus on containing main wildfires. They cannot prevent the whole disaster or save all the homes, and you cannot count on having a fire truck defending your home. Wildland fires are important to maintain our forests. Regular fires clear out the understory, control insects, and consume dead trees. Isn't it crazy how those trees and bushes just keep growing? Well, it's not natural to let it grow unchecked. If it were natural, we would have a fire come through here every 5 to 20 years. But since we don't want to let the natural fires happen, people with yards full of trees and shrubs need to learn how to do forest management. Woodmore and Monument are surrounded by forests, and flying embers can come in from as far as 18 miles away. So even if your house is not in the trees, it is still close to potentially severe fire behavior, and you still have a home ignition zone that you should evaluate for potential vulnerabilities. You've seen the burning embers landing in our yards from the Berry Fire, the Hayman Fire, the Waldo Canyon Fire, and the Black Forest Fire. All the fires listed here and more have happened just since 1977. But this is really not enough fires. We should have them all the time. Firefighters can't protect all the homes. In the 4 Mile Canyon Fire in Boulder, it had lots and lots of firefighting resources available, more than normal, in fact, yet they only attempted to protect a total of 75 out of 474 homes that were at risk. A minority of the homes were destroyed by the main crown fire, but the majority of the homes lost were ignited by spot fires way ahead of the fire. If those homes had reduced their ignition potential, many of them might have survived. The lesson is, private homeowners have the primary responsibility for home wildfire protection, and we don't mean standing there with a garden hose on the day of the fire. It's ember storms that destroy the vast majority of homes during wildfires. Embers are made of heavy flaming branches, burning wooden shingles, a burning squirrel that floated into a neighborhood that was documented in Paradise, California, and even tiny sparks like these that fly into your house through cracks, vents, and gaps that we're going to show you how to find and protect against. This form is the National Fire Protection Association form. It's a basic checklist for you to follow, starting with the house and working outward. You can fix some of these things tomorrow, and I hope you do. Others will take some planning, but should be done as soon as you can. Let's go through some of the problems to be aware of, plus suggested solutions. Always start with the house, work outward from there to make the biggest impact. How is the structure positioned in relationship to severe fire behavior? If you are within 18 miles of a forest or a natural area, you need to think about flying embers. What type of construction is the house? Let's look at the little details. They are what make the difference to those tiny sparks that can become big fires. You need a Class A roof. That's concrete or clay or fiberglass asphalt composition shingles or metal. If you have a wood shake roof, make it a priority to change it. Yes, that's expensive, but it's critical. Make sure there are no gaps in the shingles. This is a good example here. It's a clean roof, there's no gaps, there's no leaf litter, and it's made of a Class A material. This one is not. This is a Class C roof. It's a cedar shake roof full of crevices and dry fuel. It's just made of fuel. It's about the same level of safety as a roof made out of plywood or particle board. It is a perfect place for wind-driven burning embers to land and eventually burn down your house. Wood shingles are combustible. They can be treated at the mill with fire retardant chemicals and make them a Class B roof. However, the fire retardant properties of these chemicals become less effective with weathering or if the shingles are painted or stained. It doesn't matter if you have a Class A roof, but then you still have pine needles and leaf litter in the gullies or where the roof meets the side of the house. The siding could catch on fire if the embers nest there. This might seem like a little thing, but Cohen's research shows that it's a big thing. Here's what it looks like after the burning embers land on the roof gully full of pine needles. Your roof creates your house's biggest exposure to burning brands. Gutters should be made of non-combustible material and cleared of all pine straw and leaves. See how they're making the siding vulnerable to direct flame contact if the leaves catch on fire? Watch for gaps under the tiles. A tile roof itself is non-combustible, but when embers blow in underneath there, it can send the sparks inside and your home could catch on fire from the inside out. On the left, you'll see vinyl siding, which will soften and fall off and expose the gaps behind it and let the whole wall catch on fire. On the right, you'll see non-combustible siding. Examples are hardy board, fiber cement board, stucco, brick, or adobe. By the way, find out if you have a stucco house, find out if the stucco was added on top of cedar siding. So with cedar siding in log homes, which are combustible, you can use flashing at the edges. See, this metal flashing has a rust patina that helps it blend in with the stained siding. It doesn't look like metal flashing along the edges, but it prevents the embers that ignite from burning directly against the home. So the theme is looking for chinks in your home's armor. Where can those blizzards of ember attack? Those are the vulnerable spots. Let's see what else we can do about them. See here next behind the man what a gap is created by the vents. They do an important job letting moisture out, but embers could fly into the soffit vents, even through the vent itself. Also through attic vents, furnace vents, rooftop fans, the chimney, crawl spaces. So how to protect them from intrusions of sparks and still let them do their job? Use 1/8" metal hardware cloth mesh to stop those flying embers from sneaking in as easily. See the videos I have listed at the end of this presentation. One of them demonstrates how ember showers can flow right into the attic and onto the installation and start the fire from the inside. I found this on my house. This is looking up from the ground into the edge of the house behind the stucco siding. We had stucco added on top of the cedar a few years ago and we thought we were safe, but near the ground we realized we still have this gap with exposed wood and insulation foam right next to the ground. If we had an ember blizzard against the foundation, it could ignite the inside of the exterior wall through that foam and the brown wood that you see there. So we need to put flashing along this bottom edge. Blocking the gap at the bottom of your garage door with weather stripping will help stop flying embers from blowing into the garage. One of the most vulnerable parts of your house is the windows. Glass windows, regular glass breaks at 180 degrees Fahrenheit. This is tempered glass, which breaks at 630 degrees Fahrenheit. That buys you a little bit more time. But fire burns at 1500 to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. When the glass fractures due to the temperature differences, it can allow embers to fly right inside the house. Here we see if vegetation's on fire, it can create that kind of heat right by the windows, which then can fracture it, and besides catching the siding on fire, can sneak inside your house. Also, think about the skylights on your roof. Are they made of plastic or are they glass? Many attachments to your house are connected to the house and therefore are really part of the house, and they can act like a giant fuse. So what are they made of? Can you add flashing at the corners to stop the fire? And do you need to do some raking and cleaning underneath those attachments? The grass is nicely mowed at this house, but if embers landed on the evergreen there, they could set the wooden deck on fire, and now we have direct flame contact with the house. These junipers are dangerous right underneath the second level of the house there and the windows, and they don't even look pretty. Here's a view of wooden front steps on the left, and on the right you can see inside what's hiding underneath the steps, piles of scrub oak leaves. The winds blow the embers in there just the same way they blow the leaves and pile them up. So the good thing to do here would be add 1/8" metal mesh behind the steps to stop the leaves from getting in there in the first place, so we don't have to try to clean that out all the time. Embers would love to smolder in these dry leaves and eventually catch the wood siding on fire. It seems like a little thing to just sweep out the corners, but this would reduce the chance of direct flames coming in contact with the wooden wall. So 0 to 5 feet from the house should be a fuel-free zone. In that zone you can use gravel or even bare dirt, which is easier to rake. You can use a leaf blower, but sometimes that blows the gravel around. Just don't put flammable mulch next to the house. Save that for farther away. The photo on the right shows damage caused by a cigarette that was dropped into regular bark mulch. Rake those pine needles between 5 and 10 feet away from the base of the house so you maintain that fuel-free zone right at the house. And then beyond that, as long as pine needles are not more than 6 inches thick and are not creating ladder fuel underneath shrubbery or trees that can then jump up higher and higher, then you're okay. This lattice work is pretty, but it's made out of wood, and the big gaps in it probably have allowed debris to blow underneath there. A good idea would be to clean it out and then add the mesh. Here's some metal flashing along the base of a home. If embers piled up in that crack between the deck and the siding, it's less surface that's flammable where embers could smolder and ignite. They would land on the metal when they're blown in there and just go out. Even though the deck is wood and the house is wood, this protects a level of protection. Metal flashing can also be installed along the base of the home if it's made of combustible siding. It gives you a little layer of protection. Another thing about wood siding is that if you reapply stain or paint regularly, it keeps it from drying out and makes it less vulnerable. Here's a different kind of flashing. Goes that horizontal board along the the bottom of the siding is actually made of fiber cement hardy board. So it looks like wood, but it's not flammable. Look at your deck. Are those cushions flammable? Do you have a straw broom or straw mats laying around? Always think about if I was a burning ember and I landed anywhere in your house or on your yard, what would I do? Would I smolder and survive, or would I starve and go out? A wooden fence up against a house can act like a fuse. This was demonstrated in the Waldo Canyon fire. Yes, in Woodmore Improvement Association, the only fences that are allowed are wooden split rail fences. So, what to do for fire-wise safety? The answer is call the Woodmore Architectural Control Office. Talk to Bob Pearsall. You can replace the section of fence closest to your house with metal tubular fencing that is aesthetically similar to the fence or the house, but you must specifically request this permission on a case-by-case basis. So here's a picture summary of all we're going through. Starting with the roof and the rest of the house, first priority. Then the first 5 feet around the house. Then the zone up to 30 feet away from the house. Then the zone 30 to 100 feet from the house. Yes, your home ignition zone might overlap with your next door neighbor. Please invite them over for a slice of chocolate cake and show them this presentation, and maybe you can get together and make some decisions that will help both of you. From 0 to 5 feet around your house needs to be a fuel-free zone. Keep it clean. And then in the 5 to 30 feet zone, it should be discontinuous vegetation so that the fire does not jump from one tree or bush to another and be drawn toward your house. A good example of a fuel-free zone close to the house. This is not. Don't put your wood pile next to the house. Also, covering it with a tarp will not help. The embers will melt right through it. So 30 feet away would be better. Embers could blow into all this stuff. They might not actually ignite for hours, but they would then create direct flame contact with the house, and it's all because you didn't have a fuel-free zone next to the house. It would make a huge difference to remove those junipers and rake the pine needles away from the foundation in this example. Choose fire-wise plants. They are often low water usage plants also. And you don't have to have a yard of nothing but rocks. This is a xeriscape garden that is fire-wise too. It's low water use, but it's full of moisture and color. It is not a xeriscape, but a xeriscape. Here's another example of showing succulents and potted plants as a way of lightening up the area close to the house in a safe way. Oh, here's a brochure with lists of fire-wise plant materials. It has extensive lists of plants, shrubs, and trees, including their water needs, how much sun they need, and what elevations they prefer. The way to reach it is listed in the resources at the end. Propane tanks should be on a concrete pad with no flammable material underneath them. Another concern is for RVs, lawnmowers, other vehicles. Watch out when you start them to make sure sparks don't set dry grass on fire. Keep the grass mowed around them and under them. Treat a parked RV as if it is another shed or outbuilding, and make sure it's not surrounded by scrub oak and other flammable materials. Just treat it like a shed. Dry leaves need to be raked away from the fuel-free zone around this wooden shed. Fire science proves for your best chances, vegetation should be maintained for 30 to 100 feet from the house too. At that point, you need 10-foot crown spacing between the trees. Gaps reduce the possibility that a ground fire will travel from tree to tree. You should also limb up the trees about 8 feet. Or if they're short trees, separate them from others using a mosaic pattern, if you have pinyon pines, for example. The goal is to have discontinuous fuels so that a wildfire would not be drawn toward your house, but instead might just go around your house. See how this ground fire is moving along the ground? When it gets to the pine trees, it will jump up the trunk and scorch it maybe a little bit and then keep going. The ground fire won't jump into the trees in the branches if they're trimmed 6 to 10 feet above the ground. See how the fuels are staggered here? There are gaps. Instead of making a continuous path toward the house, that made a difference here. You can see it burned around it. On a steep slope, trees need to be even farther apart than 10-foot crown spacing. In addition to wider spaces between trees when you have a slope, you can add a stone or cement wall on the downhill side of your home to slow down the preheating that a fire likes to do as it runs uphill. This is the driveway to a house. It's just back there. Do you believe me? Did you know firefighters decide in a 3-second triage whether or not to try to save this house, or whether or not to even use this street as a place to try and hold the line against the main fire? What would you do if you were them in this situation? This is a dog hair thicket. None of these trees will grow healthy and strong if they are left here to compete with each other. If it's up to you, choose the best 2 from this group. Picture them growing to 80 feet tall and get rid of the rest of them so those couple trees will have branches and will be happy. This is too many trees. I call these truffula trees, like in Dr. Seuss. No fire has been allowed to thin out these trees, and so there are probably 350, 400 trees per acre in sections like this. They need to be thinned. For maximum tree health, it would be better to have 10 trees per acre, or no more than 50, so that each tree has enough water and enough light to thrive and actually have branches. We have inherited a problem here from earlier generations, but you know what? We can fix it. The residents on this property told me they have cleared at least 500 trees, and it's safer now because of it. But there are still trees on the property, and even a few years after having done the thinning, the trees are already starting to look healthier and growing thicker and stronger. These scrub oak are not helping anything. The scrub oak is also a ladder fuel that can help a ground fire climb up into the pine tree canopy. Ground fires are a lot harder to stop than ground fires. Scrub oak burns 3 times as tall as the plant is. So can you imagine flames 3 times as tall as these bushes, and then with a strong wind blowing? And scrub oak looks like this for 9 months of the year. Is it worth keeping if it puts your house at risk? Here's a before and after example from Wyoming. Here's the before. You can't even tell there's a house there except for the address. And here's the after. It still has trees and shrubs, but the fuel has been reduced. This is more like it too. This is from Woodmore. You can have trees by the house. Just choose the best trees to keep. Keep them cleaned out beneath them, so if the embers did land on the ground under the tree, the whole tree is less likely to catch on fire. And include those trees in the footprint of your house and make the 5-foot and 30-foot zones go out from there. These people have nice trees near the house, but plenty of fuel-free zone beyond them. And these are aspen trees, which are safer. See the Firewise plants list for more ideas. Scrub oak is a very thirsty plant. By removing all the scrub oak underneath the pines will have access to more water. This is a before and after. These scrub oak have been trimmed up a little, so if the ground fire started underneath them, there's less risk they would catch on fire than if they were scraggly all the way to the ground. Here's a before and after comparison. See how the fuels are discontinuous in the photo on the right, and it's still a beautiful tree lot. This is from Woodmore. Here's someone on the right track. Here's a good example of a self-defending space. This one and this next one will survive wildfires near Boulder. Your mission is to look at your home, look at your property, pretend you are a flying ember and land on all sorts of places on top of the house and in the yard. And what would happen then? Flying embers are just pesky little sparks to us, but if they find fuel, whether it's on the ground or inside your attic, then fire science takes over. Here's a better note to end on. You can do this. So now I've got a lot of pages of resources that I'm going to show one by one. If you'd like to take a picture of the slide, you can look them up using the titles I've given along with the links. So where do you start? Start local and work up from there. Contact Woodmore Improvement Association if that's your HOA. Contact your local fire department. They would love to come and do a lot evaluation for you too. If you're not in a fire district, contact the Pikes Peak Regional Office of Emergency Management for some ideas. Or to have a neighborhood class, contact them or a group like the Emergency Preparedness Group to come out and talk to your neighborhood and share information just like what's in this video. Here's a great video for you to watch. Search on YouTube for this title in red, Expert Spotlight, Ph.D. Cohen, Research Physical Scientist, U.S. Forest Service, and you'll find a 4-minute video that graphically shows everything that you need to know about flying embers and blizzard storms. Besides all the resources you can get from Woodmore or local organizations, Firewise USA is full of information, including a publication called the Home Ignition Zone Structure Assessment Guide, and I encourage you to take a look at it. Or else call an expert to come look at your property for you. They can even do it using photos if you'd rather do them that way, but I encourage you to ask for help and get some ideas. Check on the Firewise plant materials list by using the link included here. And here's another video from Larkspur talking about the Black Forest Fire. It's only 13 minutes long and you'll learn so much. The Boulder Wildfire Partners are another resource. Wildfire, Prevent Home Ignition, Part 2 is another video by Jack Cohen that's 9 minutes long and gives more examples of looking for the chinks in your home's armor. You can also look for ideas at Fire Adapted Colorado and get a resource printed one called Preparing Homes for Wildfire. Ask your local resource for printed copies of all these great resources. We haven't talked about it much tonight, but we have more speeches to give about general preparedness, and one of them is that you need to know that you do not automatically get reverse 911 phone calls on your cell phone. The ones you get from Governor Polis about masks or the ones about Amber Alerts are different. And if you want to get reverse 911 phone calls about local emergencies in your geographic area, you need to sign up for peak alerts by going to their website. A resource called Ready, Set, Go, which has been approved by a majority of fire chiefs in El Paso County, also has lots of ideas about general preparedness. Please take a look when you get a chance.